This is a Minecraft bot capable of navigating the Minecraft world all the way to collecting the most useful item in the game, a jukebox. But even a single calculation mistake can completely ruin the run, and my goal is to prevent that at all costs. What started out as a fun project quickly got into pathfinding, state machines optimization, and a lot more craziness. You see, something as simple as getting a jukebox requires a lot of steps that isn't very obvious to make. Now, what is exactly required to make a bot that can handle complex things like mining for diamonds? There isn't an obvious checklist for that, but a lot of the time the most complex looking systems are very simple at their core. Take PvP for example. At a high level it looks insanely complex, but when you break it down, it is just a chain of simpler actions. We can look at it like a pyramid. At the base there are these 5 actions. We can expand this pyramid just by chaining them together. But for these higher levels there is one major issue, which I will get to in a moment. Right now I have a dummy model set up in game, it doesn't do anything yet. So how am I going to get it to place blocks? First it is supposed to turn around to see where it is supposed to place the block. If it's further than 5 blocks away, the bot cannot reach it, so we just reject the request. Making it rotate is actually very easy. We just take the differences and find their arctan and apply that rotation to the entity. Alright, I can ask it to place a block here and it turns around and places it. If I ask it to place a block here, it rejects the request. Perfect, until it's not. Imagine the bot is trying to place a block here. Technically it's within that 5 block radius, so it will somehow magically place the block through the wall. Luckily there is an easy fix. We run a ray cast from the entity's head to the target block. If it collides with anything else along the way, we reject the request. With that, we are actually done with placing, breaking and attacking mobs, since they all run on the same principle. I can tell it to hit this mob and it turns around and hits it. I can ask it to break this block and the animation is a little wacky, but it does its work. Obviously, these instructions are manual right now, but we will automate them in the future. Right now, we have a much bigger problem to worry about. How is this bot going to navigate the uncertain Minecraft terrain? We will use an algorithm called A star. The way this algorithm works is what makes it so efficient. Imagine a 2D grid where we want to go from point A to point B. The algorithm starts by looking at every neighboring node around the point A. Let's say it picks this one. Let's call it point C. First it calculates the actual cost from moving from A to C, which is 1.414, but I am using something called a Chebyshev distance, so the actual cost is only 1. Then it makes an educated guess on what it will take to go from point C all the way to point B. It adds those two numbers together and gets the total estimated cost. And it will always choose the path with the lowest estimated cost. Well, this is just how A star works. The implementation is harder than just writing down the formula. We have to consider that Minecraft is 3-dimensional, so that is also not going to be very helpful. First thing that we have to keep in mind is that we should only check blocks with a solid block on the floor and 2 air blocks above it. So we obviously start by collecting every neighboring node. If it is not walkable, we add it in the list of positions that are already checked. Maintaining this list is important, otherwise the bot can potentially get stuck in loop. If there is a node it cannot jump upon, it rejects that too. And we have to just keep doing this until it reaches the destination or fails because either it's not possible or it's just too far away. Alright, this one took way longer than I expected it to, but it works very well. I can ask it to come here and it takes a while to calculate it, but eventually finds a path. I tried it at multiple places and it can easily navigate through anything. However, if I place a block like this, it will keep searching forever because there is no valid node around that. So how are we going to get it to place blocks? I spent a lot of time trying to find the solution when the solution was in front of us. Remember the condition I talked about? Well, if we remove this condition, the bot starts flying all over the place, and that is literally the solution. Just look at this path. This looks strong, but if you place blocks below it, the path actually becomes perfectly valid. Or if you consider this path, if these blocks were to be removed, the path becomes completely valid. So that just means that we let it move however we want to. And if it ever does anything illegal like this, we first use our place and break block functions to make it valid, and then ask it to walk through it. Though I want you to look at this path. If you were to travel from point A to B, you would certainly choose to go like this, but our bot chooses to mine the block instead because it sees that this is a little more efficient than a curved path. To compensate for this, we will add some sort of penalty if it breaks or places a block, and now it chooses the more natural path. And with that, we are actually kind of done with pathfinding. Now here it is bridging to get to the target, and it can also break blocks in the way to get there. This was definitely the hardest one so far. We can move on to the final element of the base layer, interacting with blocks. For now, I'm just coding the ability to open a chest, which is actually very easy. Now I can ask it to open a chest and it looks inside the chest and sends the items in the chat. And with that, we are done with the base layer. I can ask it to come here and place a block. I can ask it to move here and open this chest. I can ask it to break these blocks too. But do you see how repetitive it is? If I wanted to break this block, I first have to ask it to come here and then ask it to break it. What if it could do all of this by itself? And just when I thought we were done with pathfinding, our current A star only works well for short distances. Well, this is everything we'll be solving in the second layer of this pyramid. I will be unifying breaking, placing and opening chest into one function called interact. If I wanted to place a block, it first goes to our move to function. You see how this is just a chain of what we built earlier? This is why we were making the base actions before jumping into complexity. Now it can break, place and open a chest even if they are at a distance, yet it still cannot hit mobs at a distance, and it also cannot chase them. Now we just use the same architecture, except this time we just keep chaining it until the mob is dead. So after some quick copy paste, this is working as well. Now there are just two things left in our second layer. One of them obviously pathfinding over a long distance, but let's make another useful feature. Let's give it the ability to search for a block in a certain radius of itself. This will be useful later to get it to search for wood. Lucky for us, we do not have to search manually block by block because there is a method to search a block volume all at once. So that's very useful. I have decided to give it a search volume of 10 times 10 times 10. And now if I hide an iron block here, it can find it very quickly. Now let's finally face it. Our A star has two major issues. First one obviously being, how will this bot pathfind over a long distance? You see, the problem is that over a long distance, the search tree branches so much that it will almost certainly crash your game. So what's the solution? Well, stop thinking in 3 dimensions. Now we are seeing Minecraft being 2-dimensional. If you highlight every chunk border, you can clearly see a grid. Let's say you have to go from this chunk to this chunk. Instead of running A star directly block by block, we run A star on this 2-dimensional grid. Since it has one less dimension and one unit is 16 blocks, it is very light on your CPU. Once we are done with an optimal path of chunks, we run small 3D A stars from chunk to chunk one by one and connect the entire path. And before you know it, we have covered over 300 blocks while barely stressing the CPU. To get on the technical side of it, this is called Hierarchical Pathfinding A star, abbreviated as HPA star. I will not go that deep into it. Alright, what's the second problem I was talking about? If I ask my bot to go inside a cube, it will just mine the stone and go inside, right? Wrong. Depending on your device, it will really lag and even crash your game. You see, A star always tries to search the path with the lowest cost. And if you remember, I gave mining and placing blocks some penalty. So A star desperately tries to avoid mining blocks and keep searching in circles. And the solution has nothing to do with A star at all. What we need is a spatial identifier. I made a script which checks how much air is around the target. If it is around 45 to 55%, then it is safe to assume it is about the surface. And if it is less than 45%, it might be buried in a wall. So we just reduce mining penalty to 0 so that A star prefers mining. And these are the other conditions I've used. Now this mod can walk over a long distance, identify its environment, unalive mobs, mine, find blocks and entities, etc. Before moving on to layer 2, I also gave this mod the ability to equip armor and pick up items, both for surprisingly simple to implement. Speaking of simple, if you're enjoying the project, joining my Discord only takes a click. We're giving away a special role to our 100th member, so if you're watching this in the future and wondering who got it, it could be you. Alright, now what is layer 3? Now though it has an inventory, we needed to get it to craft items. Also, we need a way to get it to find any item. For example, the bot needs to know where to look if I ask it to get a diamond to make a jukebox. Let us start with a simple looking but hard task, crafting. If I ask the bot to craft a wooden pickaxe, it isn't just planks and stick, but they are also made of logs, and so on for every item. Also, there isn't a list of items with their recipe that you can directly access. I have to make this list myself. To make the list of items with their recipe by hand would take forever, so I quickly wrote this Python script which made that for me. Now that we have a list, we can make an algorithm which takes an item, checks its ingredient, then it checks their ingredient, and so on until it hits any base item. Base items are items which cannot be crafted. To get the list of base items, we just check every ingredient used in recipes. For example, beacon requires a nether star, but when you check the recipe of a nether star, it does not exist, which means it is a base item. And with that, the bot can now identify what items it needs to craft an item or a block. But how will this bot collect the item in the first place? For that, the bot needs to explore the world and know where to find the items. Forget finding part for now. Let's get the bot to find biomes, which is actually the same thing as our HPA star, so there isn't much there. So with this little walk, the bot can now find badlands if it were to get gold, or it can find a desert if it were to get cactus. But the bot itself doesn't know that. You still have to instruct it to go to the desert and then use the find function to find the cactus. Let's automate that as well. Unlike crafting, I cannot just write a Python script which generates every item with its location. So let's do some smart work. This bot is designed to craft around 400 items, but since we generated a set of base items, you can see how these 400 items are only a combination of those 70 items. So we don't need to write the location of all 400 items but only 70, which is doable. For example, cobblestone is collected by mining a stone. Then you list down the location of stone, which is listed as anywhere because stones can be found anywhere. And it is basically a list of all these 70 items. I also added the list of the right tools required to mine the right blocks. So if we ask it to get a diamond, it is actually smart enough to first craft a wooden pickaxe and then get a stone and then iron and then proceed to strip mine until it finds diamonds. So now let's say it needs to get a sword. It knows it needs to go to a forest biome, then it uses its find function to find log, then it uses the craft function to convert the item and so on. But our original question is still unanswered. Can it craft a jukebox? While it is crafting a jukebox, I have a few things to say. First of all, this thing is still in its development phase and it is buggy at times. But for the first version of it, I didn't want to be too perfectionist. This video took about 240 hours and I wanted to release the first part before I invest more time into this project. Again, thanks to i6351 to help me finish this list a little bit faster. And if you want to help me for my next project, you might want to join my Discord.